Hollywood has always sold dreams, and the biggest dream of all was the perfect romance. Boy meets girl. They fall in love, they get married, and live happily ever after. This was the story told on screen, and the story studios wanted their stars to live off-screen too. Marriage was part of the brand, stable, relatable, respectable. A wedding was a photo op that crowned a hero or a desirable heroine. Studios encouraged it, sometimes even arranged it, because it sold tickets. But some stars refused to follow this script, the fascinating exceptions. They built legendary careers without ever saying "I do." Greta Garbo, Montgomery Clift, Clifton Webb, each a giant, each walking alone. Greta Garbo was not just a star, she was a phenomenon, an ethereal presence who redefined screen acting. In an era of overt theatricality, she offered stillness. In a world of smiles, a profound melancholy. Dubbed the Divine, her face was a perfect canvas for emotion. She was an invention, a myth, yet more real than anyone on screen. But the legend began far from the Klieg lights, in the poverty of Stockholm. Born Greta Lovisa Gustafsson, her childhood was cut short by her father's death, forcing her to leave school at 14 to work. This early loss instilled a deep shyness and a yearning for security that fame could never provide. Her journey was a flight from grim reality to impossible dreams. Work as a department store clerk led to modeling, then a scholarship to Sweden's Royal Dramatic Theatre School. There she was discovered by director Maurits Stiller. He became her mentor, her Svengali, seeing the artist within the awkward teenager. He gave her the name Garbo and refused to go to Hollywood without her. MGM reluctantly agreed. From her first screen test, it was clear the camera didn't just love her, it worshipped her, capturing a vulnerability and intelligence that felt revolutionary. Her appeal was a paradox, a luminous beauty infused with a tragic melancholy. While other actors emoted, Garbo did less and conveyed more, mastering the art of thinking on camera. Entire narratives could be read in her eyes. She could convey lifetimes of love and loss with a simple glance, a turn of her head, a quiet sigh. The 1926 film ignited her stardom. Paired with John Gilbert, their on-screen passion was intense because it was real. Their off-screen affair became the talk of Hollywood. Then came the talkies, the great test for silent stars. MGM marketed her sound debut with an electrifying tagline, "Garbo Talks." Her deep, husky voice was even more hypnotic than her silence. The world was utterly captivated. She perfected the archetype of the tragic heroine in films like A Woman Destined for Magnificent Solitude. Life began to imitate art. The more famous she became, the more she withdrew, finding fame a golden cage. She shunned Hollywood's social scene and refused interviews. Her famous line, "I want to be alone," became her real-life mantra. In 1941, an attempt to reinvent her in the comedy failed. For Garbo, it was the final indignity. Disillusioned with the studio and tired of her own myth, she simply walked away. At just 36, at the height of her fame, she announced a temporary break from filmmaking. The break became forever. For the next half-century, she lived a quiet, private life in New York, turning down every offer. By disappearing, she performed her most enduring act. She was no longer Greta Gustafsson, nor Garbo the screen queen. She became a legend. Her silence was her final statement. In her absence, the enigma did not fade. It deepened, securing her place in eternity. Why did Greta Garbo, the screen's divine goddess of love, never marry? The legend, of course, begins with John Gilbert, her frequent co-star and the great love of her early Hollywood years. Their on-screen passion was so palpable, audiences believed it had to be real. And for a time, it was. The press and the public were enthralled, eagerly anticipating a wedding that would solidify their status as Hollywood royalty. A date was set, but on the day of the ceremony, the bride was nowhere to be found. Garbo simply didn't show up. The story goes that a devastated Gilbert was consoled by studio head Louis B. Mayer, his heartbreak becoming a piece of Hollywood lore. Garbo had fled, leaving behind not just a groom at the altar, but the entire institution of marriage itself. She offered no apologies or explanations, only enigmatic deflections. Her most famous response? "I was born a bachelor." This wasn't a flippant remark. It was a profound declaration of her innate character. She understood herself as fundamentally solitary, someone for whom traditional partnership felt like an ill-fitting costume. For Garbo, love felt binding, and freedom was everything. In an era when the studio system dictated a star's life, marriage represented the ultimate cage. It was a surrender of the one thing she fought to protect: her autonomy. Her desire for freedom was a quiet rebellion against a world that wanted to own her. This isn't to say her life was without love. She had intense relationships, including a famously complex bond with the writer Mercedes D'Acosta. Yet Garbo's pattern remained. She would draw close, then inevitably retreat into her fortress of solitude, letting no one, man or woman, tie her down. She was also a keen observer of her surroundings. Hollywood's golden age was littered with the wreckage of high-profile marriages, played out like dramatic scenes in the tabloid press. For a woman who guarded her privacy with ferocious intensity, the idea of her own life being subjected to such scrutiny was abhorrent. Privacy was her most precious commodity. She famously corrected a misinterpretation of her iconic line, "I never said, 'I want to be alone.' I only said, 'I want to be alone.' There is all the difference." Marriage, with its inherent social obligations, threatened the very core of that principle. And so she remained unattainable, a wanderer in life and in heart. By never marrying, she preserved not only her independence, but also the powerful mystique that defined her. Garbo's choice was a testament to her self-knowledge. Her solitude wasn't a void, it was a carefully curated sanctuary. She didn't just want to be let alone, she needed to remain wholly, uncompromisingly herself. Montgomery Clift arrived in Hollywood like a quiet storm, different from the confident leading men of his time. Born in Omaha, raised with tutors and European travel, he became a stage star before film. He resisted Hollywood's long-term contracts. When he signed, it was on his terms: creative freedom. Red River, 1948, an instant sensation. Stunning looks, raw vulnerability, quiet intensity. He helped pioneer the method's psychological realism. Oscar-nominated, torn between two worlds and women. His scenes with Elizabeth Taylor crackled with yearning. As Prewitt, his pride and pain were in his eyes and jaw. Then the crash, 1956. Everything changed. He survived, but was never the same. Pain, prescriptions. His art turned rawer, more haunted. Hard to watch, undeniably powerful. Montgomery Clift's private life was a closely guarded secret, for good reason. He was a gay man in an era that offered zero tolerance for it. Hollywood, in particular, was a gilded cage governed by ironclad morality clauses in studio contracts. The powerful publicity machines worked tirelessly to craft and maintain specific public personas. For a leading man like Clift, whose smoldering vulnerability made him a box office sensation, that persona had to be unequivocally straight. His romantic appeal to female audiences was a commodity, and the studios were its sole proprietors. To deviate from this script was to risk everything. Exposure didn't just mean scandal. It meant career annihilation, public disgrace, and the constant threat of blackmail. In this high-stakes environment, many closeted stars entered into lavender marriages, studio-arranged unions designed to provide a heterosexual cover. It was a well-trodden path, a pragmatic compromise for survival. But for Montgomery Clift, it was a line he would not cross. This refusal was a profound, if quiet, act of personal integrity. Clift, an actor who revolutionized the screen with his raw emotional honesty, could not bring himself to perform a lie of that magnitude in his own life. He was committed to the truth, both in his craft and in his soul. But this principled stand came at a staggering personal cost. It sentenced him to a life of profound loneliness, a solitary existence lived in the shadows of the very spotlight that made him a star. In that lonely world, he had one unwavering ally, Elizabeth Taylor. Their bond, forged on the set of A Place in the Sun, was one of Hollywood's great platonic love stories. She called him Bessie May, and he was one of the few people she trusted implicitly. Taylor not only accepted him completely, but fiercely defended him, offering a sanctuary of understanding in a town built on judgment. Within the industry, Clift's sexuality was an open secret, a truth everyone knew, but no one dared speak aloud. This created a surreal existence, making him feel like an outsider even at the height of his fame. His isolation was tragically compounded after the devastating 1956 car accident that shattered his famous face. The chronic physical pain that followed was mirrored by a deep psychological anguish, and he increasingly turned to alcohol and pills to numb both, retreating further into himself. He became a near recluse in his New York brownstone, a world away from Hollywood's glare. Yet, he continued to work, and his post-accident performances possess a haunting, fractured brilliance. His decision to remain single was not a romantic failure, but a necessity born of his identity. He was a tragic figure, a man who paid an immense price for fame and for the simple, defiant act of being himself in a world that wouldn't allow it. His life was tragically short, but his impact on acting and culture was profound. The beautiful, damned soul, captured forever on film, endures in memory. Clifton Webb was a different kind of star, witty, sophisticated, waspish. Born Webb Parmalee Hollenbeck, a child prodigy guided by his formidable mother, Mabel. Dancer, singer, Broadway star, long before films. Elegance, diction, refined superiority, his signature. Hollywood didn't know what to do with him. Over 50, Preminger cast him against type as Waldo Lydecker in Laura. He was mesmerizing and Oscar-nominated. Then Mr. Belvedere, persnickety, arrogant, hilarious. He became the quintessential fussy bachelor. He lived with his mother, inseparable companions. They attended every party and premiere together. Widely understood to be gay, his devotion to Mabel provided cover. His single status was his brand, on screen and off. A performer who stood apart from domestic chaos, with impeccable wit. The lives of Greta Garbo, Montgomery Clift, and Clifton Webb reveal golden age pressures and possibilities. Different people, different paths, each chose singledom in a marriage-obsessed industry. Their choices came from within. Garbo's need for solitude, Clift's hidden identity, Webb's devotion and crafted persona. Behind glamour were real people under relentless scrutiny. For Garbo, singleness cemented her mystique, the unattainable goddess. For Clift, it fed the tragic aura, the beautiful damned soul. For Webb, it defined urbane wit, the perennial bachelor. They challenged Hollywood's married mold. Audiences were captivated by mystery, tragedy, and wit, beyond romance. In a freer era, their stories still resonate, courage under a spotlight. They walked alone, but left footprints others follow, changing Hollywood forever.